Sitting in that cafe that Tuesday afternoon, mulling over a job I'd been offered, I happened to overhear a revealing chat between two other customers. They were bragging about some cash they'd stashed from a dry cleaning raid a few days earlier between large mouthfuls of bacon and eggs. Even though they were softly spoken, and I had a plastic plant-topped partition between me and them, I still heard the detail clear as day. The cash, they revealed, had been stashed in a bin they had worked out wouldn't be collected until this Friday. 10 grand in all, used notes to boot. A tidy sum these days, and lying there waiting to be lifted. How could I pass this up, I thought to myself. Cutlery clattered on the china plates, and they got up, paid, and left, none the wiser to my prying ears. So I thought, if they're planning to retrieve the cash, I could tip the police once I lifted the cash myself and suggest they lie in wait to grab them in the act, as it were. Carefully, I followed them and left the cafe. Outside, I checked where they had gone. Quite far, quite quickly as it turned out. They'd not noticed me at all. Only 1 hour till dark. I found the spot just off a little side street, nice and secluded. The place was deserted and no windows with nosy parkers inside. Opening the bin, I found the knitted eye-hold mask, which I put onto the pavement along with some pairs of gloves. Under these items, I found a plastic carrier bag stuffed full of cash. Magic! Stuffing the gloves and mask back in the bin, I made the bag look like my shopping and casually strolled off. The Bakelite telephone receiver clattered back onto the cradle and I smirked to myself having set the trap. Time to disappear. It was weeks later, a few pages into an old newspaper I picked up on the train I travelled on, that I spotted the headline, "Thieves nabbed retrieving stolen cash." Reading the detail, it noted that no cash had been found, only their masks and gloves, but they soon confessed and were raging about being counter-robbed. My plan had worked marvellously, and I had no pangs of guilt at having dubbed them in. Magic. I'd long since moved from the town where I bagged the 10 grand from under the noses of the very chaps who nicked it. My boy was with me, 11 he was, and we were living in the house I'd bought using a big chunk of that very cash. Must have been 9 years ago now, I would think. It was a pleasant place and I'd been happy there with the missus. I hadn't needed to work for a bit but settled to driving work for a local wholesalers. They sold household gear and such. It was the school holidays and I'd taken Terry, my boy, out on the delivery round that day, and we were in a cafe just starting our fry-ups when this loud group settled in the alcove nearby and noisily ordered. There were 3 of them, and this old sense of déjà vu hit me as I began to catch snippets of their conversation. I swear I was not eavesdropping. Terry downed forks full of sausage and mash whilst eagerly reading his Whizzer and Chips comic. I continued eating, trying not to listen, but it was no good. They were arrayed in a pickup down the old derelict wharves. Seems they'd not long got out of jail and were going to retrieve their loot. Hidden it was under loading bay 8, wharf number 2. A ruined barge was berthed on the right-hand side, the cash hidden further along under all the woodwork in a green tool bag. I looked at my boy as he turned a page of his comic and cleared his plate. He was a good eater and would be a big lad one day. I heard no more as an argument broke out between a couple close by the door. What do? I thought, like years before it was just waiting there, for the taking. Only thing is, I had no idea when these villains would go along to retrieve it. I finished the working day with Terry and we went home. All the while I was dwelling and fretting on this hidden booty, waiting to be lifted. After dinner, I made an excuse to the missus to get out. I had to see for myself, opportunity knocking and all that. The approach to wharf number 2 was very open, nowhere to hide, so I made out to be a casual stroller enjoying the evening. Well, the day's dream ended abruptly when I saw a group of policemen on the very spot in question. Sadly, there'd been no repeat of the good fortune of years ago. I came out of this shop really pleased with myself as I'd just bagged a bargain in the shoe department. I'd barely gone through the door when I was barged aside by another customer who passed by and stumbled on a paving slab and crashed to the ground, spraying the contents of her bag towards the curb. Right behind her were the shop's security staff. It seemed she'd been spotted changing price labels around and bagging items with the intent to avoid paying for them. Clutching at the lady's arm, she was hauled up as the manager arrived to join them. A member of the staff gathered up her stuff from the pavement and held out the stolen items to the manager. He had a walkie-talkie in his hand on which he was being told to detain the lady inside and wait for the police to arrive. What a show-up! I got myself together and left them to it. I needed a coffee and headed straight to Percy Ingles along the High Street, a ways, and grabbed a table by the door. I could hear other shoppers chatting about it as they went by. "Aren't things getting awful these days?" they were saying, and I thought, indeed they are. We'd gone out early to miss the crowds. The sales were on and my daughter wanted some smart clothes for her swish new job as a receptionist at the big firm in town. Despite our efforts to beat the shopping crowds, we were still caught up in it. My fella got fed up with the pushing and shoving halfway around our favourite clothing store, and he said he was going to the pub. As I watched him stomp off, I clocked that we were being watched by store staff. Funny, I thought, what's so interesting about us? My daughter got het up all of a sudden as she realised that her bank card was in my fella's wallet as she'd forgotten to bring her back. Clutching at the dress she wanted, she dashed after him as he neared the exit. It was then I noticed who the store staff had been watching. There were two ladies behind us, who no sooner had my daughter dashed after my fella had promptly dashed after her, seemingly aware they had been spotted. Well to say, the spectacle, moments later, was uncanny was an understatement. At the same instant my daughter caught up with my fella in the shop exit, these two thieves dived between them both and stumbled over onto the pavement in a right heap, knocking my daughter to one side with my fella pressed back against the frame with his arms raised like he was being arrested. Moments later, the store staff caught them all up and pounded on the thieves. I later recalled the similar event years ago, with me being one being barged aside by thieves, and how spookily similar it was. Over the top and I stumble as something hits me in the face. I wipe my lips and see some blood. A tiny piece of shrapnel has cut my lip. I look ahead, but where it could have been worse, and see smoke billowing from the hedgerows to my right. A mortar blast behind sends me to the mud. I lay still, reading the scene in my head. My ears stop ringing and I hear the rest of my unit either side. Onto the objective, a river crossing 1.5 miles ahead, pushing bits of wood and other flotsam out of the way. I wade across and grapple with the mud and read on the bank. Having hauled myself back to dry land, I shake off the mud and feel a thump on my shoulder. The unit CO points to my right and sends me to where the whole unit is gathering. We all crouch as low as another shell explodes close to where we've just been. 1/2 mile along, we see other unit members finishing wiring up explosives and bridges ramparts. When they're done, we come under more fire, but a mortar shell ends the hail of bullets and we scatter away to cover. One click and the bridge is blown. The radio barks into life to give new orders, and off we go to something new. I looked down on the theatre of operation. The drones were great for a bird's eye view of things. A series of trenches ran east to west, and then suddenly the urban built-up area of the town was sitting there inside them, as if from nowhere. I switched the viewpoint back to ground eye level, and was in one of the trenches a few clicks from the road I needed to get to. When the shock of the blast hit me as they blew the bridge, dust and crap swirled in a cloud around me. That was the van's escape route cut at last. They had pinned us down, but half my unit ramrodded their way out and flanked them to cut them down, with us giving mortar fire in the middle of their numbers. The van was deployed as the objective. It had been looted from the town's bank, and we had orders to take it and secure it. Incoming missiles sent us to the deck, and quite a few of the guys were shaken with the shock of it. How no one lost a piece of themselves or got killed, I'll never figure. I suddenly got pulled up out of the trench by my CO, and most of my unit were on the move, with me quickly grabbing my wits and joining them. Up ahead was the van. It had run into a ditch, and some of the enemy were underneath shooting at us. The van itself looked where the Axel had gone. Securing the gold was the mission, so we lobbed grenades at it, and then saw the end of the enemy fighting. With the gold extracted and loaded onto a half-track, the stat screen popped up, and we've done well. Extraordinary how realistic PC games have become. I should know, I ran the gauntlet several years ago. Molly watched as the high wooden panels that fenced off the left and right of the last stretch of the N55 whizzed by. But not so many buses carried herself, her hubby Bernard, and all the members of the dance club they could cram in. Even some members of the Amdram group had squeezed in. Very shortly after they were on the seafront watching the Blackpool Tower loom larger before them, people was everywhere. It was high summer and Molly and Bernard had reached the finals of the Blackpool dance competition being held in the Empress Ballroom. As they stood at the bottom of the tower, among the teeming throng of people, all Molly could think of was the view from the tower top. Joining the queue to ascend, they were awestruck by the fabulous sight of the Empress Ballroom itself, with its beautiful panelling and drapes, lighting and immaculately polished floor. All seemingly cut from another age, it was breathtaking. As they passed around the balconies in the enormous queue, they wondered how, as contestant couple number 10, they would fare in the evening's competition. Up and up endless stairs and levels, they finally reached the top of the tower, where Molly was suddenly struck by terror as she realised the height she was at. People were like ants on the street below, and a clear, fabulous view stretched in all directions for miles around them. She placed her hand on the protective metal panel frame surrounding her and Bernard, and suddenly turned to Bernard, ashen-faced. "It's swaying," she said. Within seconds she was sick and sadly remained too unwell to complete that evening. Molly and her hubby Bernard had continued competition dancing for many years and had achieved winning status at many events. They hadn't been to Blackpool for 8 years and had loved their last trip, apart from Molly being sick at the tower top. Naturally, all the same gang tagged along, eager to see them get somewhere this time round. The crammed not-so-mini bus travelled down the M55, approaching the town and all the development work that had been completed, with the old wooden panelling cleared away. It was autumn now, and they travelled down late on in the afternoon, so dusk was edging in over the seascape horizon as they arrived on the main promenade. The famous street lighting display had just been put up and was beginning to stir in luminous life before them. Pretty famous and dazzling it was too. All film stars and celebrities, it fit the mood and purpose of the trip perfectly. There were already throngs of visitors ambling along the seafront, admiring the display, and the not-so-mini bus slowed as the volume of traffic grew in their way. Arriving at the base of the tower, they stopped, got out and stared at the promotional posters telling of the dance competition finals in the Empress Ballroom. They wanted to have a quick look around, but Bernard suggested they check into their guest house first and settle in. They were all hungry, so a meal was sought and enjoyed nearby. Always great portions up in Blackpool, with real home hospitality thrown in, despite so many tourists returned every year. Of course now it was getting too late, and with the finals the following evening, we decided to retire for the night. First thing the next morning, with a hearty breakfast inside them, they set off to have a look around. Bernard mentioned returning to the Blackpool tower top, but Molly was adamant she wouldn't be going back up there after last time. They spent the day on the beach after doing some souvenir shopping, and then prepared to compete. Feeling strangely nervous, the pair assembled with the others ready for their turn. The judges sat scribbling and consulting furiously, and then declared the winners. This time Molly and Bernard triumphed, bagging first place. Needless to say, the celebrations went on well past midnight. As a small boy in 1894, my pa always told me that I should own a piece of the American dream. I wasn't sure what that was rightly, but he went to help me understand what it meant, and I became a believer. As a true patriot, he was a real clear voice on the merits and his love for the good old US of A. When I was grown, nurturing a new family of my own, and pa just passed, I dwelt long and hard on the things he told me. Advice on how to be, how to live, what to strive for, and things that mattered and such. But what struck me above all else was the slice of America idea, which I struggled to make something of for a good long while. Me and Tammy had settled in a ramshackle shack I'd built in a deserted spot along a dirt track on the Florida coast. It was a fly speck of a town whose names kept changing like the weather. We grew our own and kept some livestock, and that seemed all we'd ever known. Some of the goats had strayed to the track, and I was gathering them into the small corral out back of the shack when I slid dust trails away off, and one of the new automobiles came out of the middle of it, and stopped as I'm shooing goats out of the way. Shiny and black, this fangled horseless carriage empties its driver, a portly fellow with a moustache, slicked down like his hair. We exchanged greetings and chatted about the day, the town, yonder, and my little spread. Well, it turns out he's one of them realtors selling plots of land in the cahoots with a bank. Clydesdale, I think he called it. Apparently there was all this new money available to lend to prospective new investors like me, and the land as security till owed monies had been cleared down. Calling me son, he says my shack is on a fair-sized plot of its own, and it would be real swell if I was the actual owner, and how beneficial it could turn out. Remembering my pa's words, we chatted some more, filling in the details, Tammy looking anxiously on, and Happy and I signed me a deal where the bank would put up half the money and my pa's legacy would cover the rest, with this here realtor drawing up the paperwork, all legal like for a consideration. A man's got to eat after all. Well, a few days later, there we were, owners of our own spread, a piece of the American dream under our feet. I felt so proud and chuffed. I was sure Pa was looking down on us in a likewise state. So we started to suck a life there. Me taking work in all sorts of places, doing a whole manner of tasks and such, and making the payments with a struggle, but making them nonetheless. Then I see this here newspaper, months later, when the owning sheen was starting to wear off and the grudge was grinding. I was sat resting on a bench in town, tired and thirsty, quenching that thirst and reading all this stuff by Jonathan Leonard. With the stock crash in London, England back in September and other money woes. Seemed far away to me. Well, a little less than a month later, Wall Street crashed and the words of that there newspaper man came true. My world and life fell apart as my piece of the American dream was wiped out on October 29th, 1929. I sat at my home office window, looking at my grandpa's picture on the window ledge. Not long into the new century, he and my grandma had bought their first just trail spot in Florida, and had been real proud of what they'd made of themselves. In the picture, my pa was on the porch, gap-toothed and smiling eagerly at the newspaper photographer who was documenting the crash of 1929. Jonathan Leonard was the reporter's name, and he related the pain and awful trauma of the losses many folks suffered. As bad as it was, the world moved on and we survived as a family. The American dream lived on, and I still stood by my pa and grandpa's mindset of owning my own piece of that dream. I was now married to Mary, and she was heavily pregnant with our first child. Following in Pa's footsteps, I've been careful to buy stocks in the choice new internet startup companies, selling and providing products and information on anything you could name. I had a good job selling pneumatic equipment of all kinds across the state and beyond, and began small, buying stocks at say 60 cents or $1 each. They were brand new companies, fresh out the box. Many were wary of this new tech, but I could see that this was the future and it was going to be big. All kinds of things were moving to this internet, nothing you can touch, way of doing things, and it saved people a whole lot of time. You could compare a book's prices from across the board and buy it with a few taps. Seemed to me the track into the future was heading up, and sure enough my low-cent $1 investments soon climbed rapidly, getting real valuable. It was all new and there was a buzz, and excitement gave me a real kick to be riding this roller coaster. Even with Mary taking me aside and pleading not to sink everything we had into it, I countered what she was saying about Grandpa's losses, all of them, years ago, and told her it can't happen twice. I backed so many startups I couldn't fail. Well, that's how it seemed to me anyhow. The dot-com bubble, they called it. By the middle of 2002, it had well and truly burst, nigh on 5 trillion in losses, give or take, and with it everything we had, just like Grandpa nearly a century ago. Lisa and Terry were both a bag of nerves and had been snapping at each other for weeks now. Both their respective parents had been trying to keep the lid on tempers through that time with varying degrees of success. The closer the wedding got, the more intense the things seemed to become. Then, as if from nowhere, it all disappeared and settled. The trauma about the food, the acrimony about the guest list, the fact that Terry didn't really get on with Lisa's brother Matt all ceased to matter. There was a sudden pressing focus on the here and now. Amazing, considering how much energy both of them had spent on battling it out. Both sets of parents took advantage and got all the final arrangements sorted. Fitted out in all their finery, the happy couple and all their family, relatives and friends were assembling outside their respective homes, ready for the off. Lisa and her father left in the splendid limo and travelled for 10 minutes to arrive first at St. Saviour's Church. The maids of honour helped Lisa out and ensured her dress didn't snag or get covered in dirt. Lisa's father stood by and gazed proudly as his daughter straightened herself out, ready to enter the church. With the wedding dress train in their hands, the maids of honour followed father and daughter through the wooden archway into the church grounds. The limo driver slowly moved off to park and wait. Shortly after, as they disappeared inside St. Saviour's, the wedding party began to pull in and step forward to enter the church to the sound of Mendelssohn's Wedding March on the organ. Excitement and nerves strolled in equal measure as they entered, but then the music stopped and eyes fell on the aisles in front of the altar, where a stricken body lay. As the confusion reigned, Lisa's father was seen clutching at his chest as his wife knelt anxiously by his side. Lisa, now joined by her prospective husband, looked on in horror. People dashed about and panicked. Desperate phone calls were made, but it didn't stop Lisa's father dying of a heart attack before the ambulance arrived. It would be a year later before Lisa and Terry married, and it was not the event it should have been without a father of the bride. Lisa's inbox pinged. It was lunchtime and she and Terry were enjoying a rare day off together. Terry cast her a look that beckoned her to check. She'd recently completed her economics degree course and obtained a 2-1 pass. Reaching for her phone, she checked the message. It was from her university, and it was notification and invitation to her graduation ceremony. She was officially a graduand, someone about to receive their academic degree. The email detailed the where and when, that she can invite 4 guests, and a gown and graduation cap would need to be hired or bought. There was the option of getting a unique commemorative item, a custom pin adorned with her name and the sigil of the university. It went on to urge her to book guest tickets as soon as possible. She slumped back in her chair, clutching her phone to her chest and gasped with a huge grin on her face. Terry leapt over and gave her a congratulatory hug. The following week saw frenzied activity as all the arrangements were made and the morning finally arrived. The staff checked Lisa's attire to ensure she and her fellow graduates were ready and comfortable. The venue hall was very fit for purpose, and Lisa felt intimidated by it as she stood waiting for the academic staff to finish filing past them and gather on the stage. Her guests had been separated as they came in with the graduates, kept in their study groups and guests behind. The Chancellor opened the proceedings and then graduands were awarded their degrees. Lisa's mum beamed with pride at the sight of her receiving her cylinder on the stage. She thought of her late husband and how he would have loved to see both her wedding and her graduation. Tears welled in her eyes, but she retained her composure. Lisa returned to her chair after shaking the Chancellor's hand, clutching her degree cylinder proudly. Further speeches followed, and the graduands and their guests filed into the quadrangle, where photographers waited to record their joy. Staff reminded graduands to return any hired gowns and caps to the companies they had got them from as they positioned themselves for the photos. There seemed to be some disturbance amongst Lisa's party and those nearby. Lisa moved to the centre of the throng to find her mum collapsed into the yard. First aid quickly arrived at the scene, but sadly neither they nor the ambulance speeding its way to them could prevent her passing as her husband had at Lisa's wedding many years before. On the 3rd of March 1933, in Blackfriars Street, central Manchester, 3 men, 2 aged 33 and the other aged 30, were killed outright by an experimental tri-car vehicle, which mounted the pavement in an attempt to avoid a head-on collision with a heavy goods vehicle. The tri-car was designed and built by Mr. A.E. Trident and never went into commercial production. It was noted that the third finger on each man's left hand had either been damaged or cut off as a result of the accident. On the 3rd of March 1973 in Blackfriars Street, central Manchester, 3 young lads, 2 aged 13 and 1 aged 9, suffered minor injuries after the go-karts they spent many weeks building collided with each other whilst trying to avoid a lorry that crossed the junction just beyond the River Irvine where it met Deansgate. Some 33 yards on from where they started, all the loving work the lads had lavished on their go-karts was ruined, and the collision resulted in scuffed knees, firewood, and the angry shouts of the lorry driver they narrowly avoided. Any event or incident can reoccur years later and can be recognized as identical or very similar, suffering minor or significant variations, hence the sense of déjà vu. Amongst the myriad variables are a reversal of an event's order or a substitution of similar actions, a change of sex of the participants, instigators, and victims, with the interval between events of interest similarly being immensely variable. It is here that striking similarities across time intervals become somewhat unbelievable. What are the chances of the same thing happening in the same way to the same people with slight variations either side of a time interval?